The US-Israel-Iran war is now expanding. The theater of this conflict has moved from the Mediterranean up to the Indian Ocean region now. It is reaching very close to India's doorstep. How are the stakeholders looking at it? What have the responses been? How should this region, this part of the world, particularly India, look at it? And what does this mean for the war itself? At the beginning of the war, Sandeep, Pranay, we've been discussing this all along about how many more days, whether it's weeks, will it end sooner or later? I was one of those who said that it was going to end sooner than later because the pain points are a lot. Sandeep, would you like to weigh in on the situation, the fact that you have a submarine in the Indian Ocean taking down an Iranian ship, which Dr. Arakchi, the foreign minister of Iran, has called guest of the Indian Navy?
Well, Geeta, this conflict, as you mentioned, this is one of the most unique conflicts of the 21st century. There's never been a conflict in the last 25 years where we've seen, one country target a dozen other countries with drones, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles. We've not seen warships being sunk by submarines, nuclear powered attack submarines of the kind that we saw very recently of Sri Lanka, where a US SSN sank an Iranian warship. Iran has lost more than 20 of its warships. Again, that is something that we have not seen. We've not seen a naval dimension to a conflict, I would think, in the 21st century. We've seen an air dimension, a very large air dimension, where you're looking at the Israeli Air Force flying the largest missions ever, 200 plus fighter jets being launched in the air. They're talking of 1,000 sorties being generated every day. This is the kind of tempo of warfare that, quite frankly, we've not seen in a generation, as the Americans put it, at least 20 years, and certainly not in the 21st century. So it's a very, a bizarre, a very unique kind of a conflict. And I think a lot of it began with a lot of miscalculations. The US assumed that they would drop a lot of bombs, kill the Iranian leadership, and before you know it, it would be a Venezuela kind of situation, right? That didn't work to plan because the Iranians also had agency. They had planned this through. They had created this mosaic strategy. They had created a line of succession after Ayatollah Khamenei. They had planned for exactly this eventuality, and for them, it seems to be working to plan right now.
Okay, miscalculation, we'll talk about that. But before that, reactions. This is the Indian Ocean region. It might not be Indian territorial waters or Sri Lankan territorial waters, but it still is in the zone of India's influence. These are our strategic waters. And in that, you're seeing this. I would have flipped the argument, and I did that earlier during our editorial meeting. We have that, that if this were a Chinese submarine, the outrage, Sandeep, would have been absolutely different. So, Pranay?
Geeta, if you see the current global order, the rules of game for United States and its allies are different, and rules for their adversaries are different. So there are different yardsticks at play. But I would say that,
Isn't that sad that, we're saying this and we're allowed to say it, and this is the truth. But the fact that, we're saying it. We're saying that the rules of engagement and the yardstick.
Why just you, Geeta? Or why just Pranay? I mean, the Canadian Prime Minister has said that.
Exactly.
I'm just saying just the fact that it
baffles you.
It's baffling.
These are the times that we're living in. It's like, 25, 26 years into the 21st century, and the rules-based order, which is set up in 1945.
I would like to take forward from where Sandeep has left that this is not in last 25 years. If you see post-Second World War, this is the biggest conflict. If the submarines are involved, if they are torpedoing the ships, and in fact,
bombing a country
in last 6 days, if you see the expanse, as you mentioned, from Mediterranean to Indian Ocean region, and if over a dozen countries are involved, this is perfect recipe for a world war. And who knows, it may be a modern warfare situation because, at a time when the friend and foe identification and the false flag operations are being carried out, who knows, tomorrow, if, I'm just thinking loud, but tomorrow, if some incident happened with the Indian naval ship, before the government will be under pressure, then whether to respond, not to respond, and there is a public pressure. in such situation, because the UK government has said that their RAF base in Cyprus was not targeted by Iranian. They did not specify who targeted it, but
the fact
reports,
that they actually came out and clarified that it's not Iranian. It did not come
similar
from Iran.
report came from Turkey as well. Today, Azerbaijan was also attacked. It's reportedly by Iran. Iranians did not claim this kind of attack. So far, Iran did not target any of its land neighbor, like a land border neighbor. They did not target any of them.
They are not doing that. Yes,
they are not deliberately not doing it. But still, there are reports coming from Azerbaijan, report coming from Turkey, and this is widening every day with every hour. And if the US Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, and if I may quote him, so he said that this conflict was never meant to be fair. So this is our game, this is our operation.
Amazing?
We will hunt down.
Yeah, so to take off from where Pranay left, the fact that it is a collapse of the rules-based order, and what is the Indian Navy exactly supposed to do in a conflict like this? Sure, it's in our backyard. You have an American submarine there, and submarines do not announce their presence,
Absolutely.
especially when they're at war stations, action stations, battle stations. They will not announce their presence because their whole things of survival is stealth. Right?
Stealth.
And they are not duty bound to inform the Indian Navy or any regional navy before undertaking their action. Did the United States ask anyone before invading Iran? Or
But I'm just saying,
Iran?
in terms of your strategic
even if
partners,
You're worried
your
about the
Quad, your
optics. You're looking at
Indo-Pacific,
the
we are
optics of
looking.
it.
Yeah, should we not?
What do you
No,
expect?
obviously,
from
but
strategic
even if we have
Partners,
nothing,
okay,
nothing
Sam, just
matters.
No, but Geeta,
zoom out a little.
even if we-
I'm saying the problems for India would have been a particular set if India would have been informed, and a particular set if it's not informed. Either way, the questions to the government in terms of our engagement with the United States of America, how much is too much in terms of what we're taking in, should we speak at least on certain issues and certain things that matter to us. We have been saying this, and I
But
say
Geeta,
this,
but aren't we saying? Aren't we calling out United Nations as a failed institution? Aren't
But
we
it's not
saying?
just- but it's
Did
not
we
just
say
UN,
that?
Pranay.
No, it's not about. It's about
I'm just saying every country. Look at Bangladesh.
the rule-based order.
India kept saying, do not do what you're doing. It is strategically and security-wise very bad for India. Nobody's paying attention. Nepal, similarly so. And Sri Lanka, we've been saying it time and again, look, if we are strategic partners, you also have to take
On
into
the lighter
account
note, I think this is the perfect opportunity for
And
Prime Minister
Iran.
Modi to call up President Donald Trump and say that this is not an era of war, stop war, because he can say that I have
And he
stopped
should
this-
stake a claim for a Nobel Prize.
Exactly, and
To
also,
stop conflict between Iran and
on a
United
lighter
States.
note, I'm not mocking the incident which happened in Kuwait, but we can also stand up and say that so many aircrafts have been down.
Yeah, of course. No, the shoes on
So
the
How
other
many?
foot.
when the battlefield is
Tell
there,
us.
when an operation,
count now,
Yeah.
Mr.
So because-
President, sir.
3 F-15s
3,
down.
4,
Yeah.
5, 6, because he's every day he adds one more to the
So
India-Pakistan
he's not going to
conflict.
make that claim of being the first
But this
American
is the
president not
difference.
to start a war, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't expect to get into this kind of a war, and now you're looking at mission creep, where your mission is changing from regime change to now, removing Iranian missiles and nuclear, capping the nuclear programs, and all of that. But the other point about the involvement of India and in the Indian Navy is there are other issues to this conflict which I'm worried about. Is the fact that tomorrow, if the United States were to refuel in an Indian
yes.
port,
yes.
citing Limoa, right? We are duty bound to supply them with fuel. When they do that, does India become party to the conflict?
Yeah,
Would
because they
Iran-
keep saying we fuel the Russian war.
Yes. So would the Iranians be then justified in launching an attack on a U.S. port when it's on a U.S. warship and it's refueling in
Indian
Indian
port.
waters or on an Indian port? We become party to the conflict.
Sandeep,
Those
you
are
have raised a
bigger
very
issues.
pertinent point.
That's
If you
a
see the
very
entire
scary-
theatre, if
that's
you
a very
see
scary scenario.
if United Kingdom refuses, and if you
Yeah.
continue to refuse Diego Garcia
Garcia.
to United States, then their fallback option comes to our region.
Right. Well, UK
like-
hasn't refused Diego. They still have.
Diego Garcia.
They have that presence,
They have-
but there
they
are
have
there
the
are issues. There are
island. They have
issues.
the,
There are
Because
issues.
you refuse
In fact,
operation.
I would say that they are also
the
in
US.
a tight spot, because on one side the UK RF base came under attack. Whosoever has attacked, they have moved their
But even
their
there,
destroyer and their
even there they're
warships.
saying that we are only
Yeah.
going to defensive, not offensive. The UK is very clear.
Right.
Even if it has to be involved in the conflict, it is only going to be defensive, not offensive.
But Geeta,
No, but
you're right.
what I'm
They
saying
are
is that
they
Keir
are in a
Starmer's
defensive
taking
posture. But the very
Keir
fact
Starmer's
that they
taking
have
a stand.
but very fact that they have moved their military assets, and not only the United Kingdom, French have moved their Charles de Gaulle, their aircraft carrier. The Italians have also indicated and announced that they are going to
Because
move their
French
military
had
assets.
come under attack, the refinery, right?
Absolutely, this is how any conflict expands. Now, look, if Europeans have come under, if they are also getting involved, if they have moved their military
So
assets
this is
in the region.
escalation from this end, right?
Yeah.
The coalition of the willing is what we're calling it, because they're all coming together because of the attacks.
Yeah.
But the axis of resistance is what we're calling the other half or whatever.
It's
Iran and a
largely
few
Iran.
others.
It's largely Iran.
Iran, no, but China
So,
and Russia.
China and
But-
Russia, today Russia has categorically said that they are not extending any military help. Currently, what
No,
Iran,
that's because Iran has not sought. They did not say they're not extending. They're saying Iran has not sought.
Iran has not
and
sought.
Iran continues to maintain that they are going to defend themselves. But if the escalation we're talking about from this end, let's look at the escalation from the other side. What's the other next big step? We're hearing a lot of people talk about the desalination plants.
Yeah, they could be targeted.
What is that?
By Iran. Well, the Gulf states depend. They have no freshwater sources of their own. Therefore, they depend on desalination, the seawater, which they run through desalination plants, and they all have those plants, and those are vulnerable areas for them. And if they were to be targeted, that would be very unfortunate, because it would make these countries unlivable. Then you would have to fly in, fresh water of a kind. We've seen those crises happen in the Maldives.
Yes,
for
in the
instance. You could
Maldives,
have a
when India sent
situation
water.
like that. That could be in the escalation ladder as well. Iran has 2 submarines, 2 ocean-going submarines still left. The Kilo-class submarine, the Americans have knocked out 1. They had 3, which they bought from Russia almost 3 decades ago. They're in fairly good condition. 1 was knocked out because it was alongside. 2 are unaccounted for. Who knows where they are. So Iran could possibly pull off some surprises, military surprises at sea. It attacked one tanker with an unmanned surface vessel. They could have a few more aces up their sleeves in the maritime theatre, but their primary focus is going to be to keep up the tempo of missile attacks, spread it over several days to make this war costly for the Americans, to draw the Americans
And the Arab world, and the Gulf.
and the Arab world and Israel into a war of attrition, which then they believe that they can, last them out.
But
That is the kind of thing, exactly like you saw in the 12-day war last year.
Yes, but as they are saying that they have put more military assets as compared to, forget about the 12-day war, even more military asset, as compared to shock and awe of 2003, and even all the recent military operations of the United States, and this is the combined military force of Israel and United States.
Yes.
So there is
US Air Force and US Navy from 2 carrier
absolutely
strike groups.
2 carrier battle groups, and plus the air power of Israel, which is like very strong air power. But my concern is about the shifting of the goalpost, as in we are now talking about the extended timelines, like we started with maybe a week or so, or 10
Now
days,
more than 4 to 5
12
days.
days. Certainly now the US Department of War has started garnering support, or kind of the funding for 100-day operation. And they are also started talking about including the rebels, the Kurds. If you are coming down
there's a
to
land
ground,
invasion through
land invasion,
by the Kurds.
the biggest worry is that Iran is a 93 million people country. It's a huge population, a difficult mountainous terrain, and it's a different ethnicity as well. You have the Persian ethnicity, you have the Azari ethnicity, you have Kurd ethnicity, and also you have Baluch ethnicity. What if it goes on the ground and it becomes messier?
Of course.
If you are involving the rebel groups and asking or exploring possibility that tomorrow the IRGC or the Islamic regime get dethroned, they will hunt them down,
but I
and are expecting some rebel group to take over. Are we looking at another Syria?
But I think they're again underestimating Iran. If you think you can just go in and you think you can take, it's going to be rather messy.
Yeah, because Iran is a natural fortress. If you look at the way the country is shaped, with mountains on all 4 sides, there's
And water.
literally there's no safe passage for anyone to enter. But my sense is that if the US were to actually contemplate that, they would be looking at a limited incursion into, say, Tehran. They would believe that if they were to come in from the north and the northwest, from Iraq and those sides, they could push in to Tehran and then appoint a puppet regime of their own or something like that. But in that case, then you would see a fracturing of the country, because you would have regime loyalists ruling over one part of Iran.
God forbid, but if we see a
Pro-Americans on
fractured
another side.
Iran, what will be the impact of a fractured Iran for our regional security and stability?
Especially for India.
Fractured Iran
Especially for India.
is not good for anyone in the region.
Absolutely.
Because then you will be looking at a million people, the fighting component of the ground forces all over the place. There would be weapons being trafficked all around. There would be a collapse of law and order. And then what happens to countries like this when law and order collapses? We saw that with Iraq. I've seen it in Libya. I was in Chad when I saw the impact of a decade ago. The impact of weapons coming out of Libya, and they were arming rebels across Africa.
But Sandeep, Geeta, you have heard President Donald Trump clearly say, sitting along with the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, he said that we did a mistake in Iraq. We dismantled the entire government structure, including military of Iraq.
That's a good point.
And we ended up having ISIS.
Yes.
So we are not going to do the same mistake.
You can
so
say
we like modification of the government.
But he can say whatever he wants to, Pranay. The fact is that, and most of the analysts are saying this, that all the people that he could have used for the transition, he's already killed them. 49 of the leadership, and he himself is saying it. That right now we are facing a problem because we don't have anybody to replace the
but there could be an alternative.
They're all dead. The final word before I let you go.
Do you think that he has a plan, or they have entered without a plan?
They've entered without a plan. It's very clear.
How can it be? This is the plan they have been working on. Pentagon has been working on this plan for years.
They did not wargame this at all.
This is not, this is Netanyahu.
So you mean Iran surprised them?
Completely. They thought they could decapitate the regime on day one, on the 28th of February.
A pick in and out.
And yes, a dip in, dip out kind of a thing. And they thought by the 1st of March you would have a
civilization state like
government.
Iran, a deep entrenched government structure of IRGC and Besiege and the entire Islamic regime.
Underestimated.
They can still think that they'll have a shock and awe, and
There is something called the smart bomb trap, which this scholar called Robert Pape has come out with, where he talks about this theory that the precision, the nature of precise bomb attacks so intoxicates the people who launch them that they believe that they can launch 1,000 strikes, decapitate a leadership, hit simultaneously, paralyze the command and control network in a country, and victory would be yours. This is exactly the kind of logic that the US went into.
Sandeep, this could have
Vietnam
been,
War.
this could be a theoretical model, but what happened in Vietnam, and so far no one has succeeded by ensuring a regime change by bombing
from the air.
Like in the air.
But I think we still think that, because Pete Hegseth just spoke about another missile, right?
Yes.
And what is it called? The bomb. I mean, we are giving it a name. What are we calling it? Or what
a doomsday bomb.
Doomsday bomb.
Doomsday. That's like
Minuteman 3.
That is.
No, but they still believe that they can do this and make.
But what do you make out of its timing, Sandeep?
Affect change.
Separate.
What do you make out of its timing?
The timing of the test.
Yes.
The timing of the test.
And the announcement.
It was a scheduled test. I'd go by the official statement, but very quickly, the backdrop of this test is that Start 2 has a new start.
Yes. A new start has
4th of Feb. It ran out. The UN Secretary General is on record, Antonio Guterres, where he says this is one of the most dangerous times in the world today, because you have the two biggest nuclear powers who are not talking to each other on arms limitations, nuclear arms limitations.
That's what START Treaty is for our viewers. It basically limits countries.
It limits them to about 50 weapons, nuclear warheads, deployable nuclear warheads.
Two biggest nuclear power states.
And that's what confined US and Russia, but not China.
Yes.
So now they're out of the treaty. The treaty expired, and there's no renewal because everybody thinks China is building warheads and they're not allowed to.
The Americans don't want to cap their arsenal.
Now they don't want to cap.
Now you're looking at the first time in more than 50 years, in half a century, where the US, there is no limit on the number of nuclear weapons that the US and Russia can have. And there is a lobby within the United States which is saying again, this is the first time in history that continental United States is being targeted by not one, not two, but 3 nuclear weapon states. China, Russia, and North Korea. This has never happened in the history of the US. There is a significant amount of debate within the US strategic community about expanding the US nuclear arsenal beyond New START limits. START and New START were for Russia and for the United States when they were facing each other as near peer adversaries. It's not meant for the US with 3 guys. Like they've got 1 gun, there are 3 guns pointing at them. So you're looking at very dangerous times. 2026
Absolutely.
is, we are heading into uncharted territory in more ways than one.
And
It's
we have
not
just
Iran.
Okay, quickly.
completed 2 months of
Is
2026.
this what we're seeing today, very quickly, what we're seeing today, is this the new world war? Is this how world war will look like in the 21st century? Or is it just a confined, limited conflict?
No, I think it is a confined, limited conflict. There are many countries at war simultaneously. Let's not forget Pakistan and
Afghanistan.
is still fighting.
Pakistan and
There's a
Afghanistan.
border dispute on there. There is
Europe
Russia
and
and
Russia.
Ukraine. That's been the 5th year is on. The US and Israel are of course at war. The world is at war, but I don't think we're looking at a world war. Now, for a world war, you need the 2 other big powers to enter, which is Russia and China. They so
Yes.
far sitting, they've got their own fish to fry. China is looking at frying the Taiwanese fish. Russia is looking at frying the Ukrainian.
Ukraine.
Exactly.
So,
It's already there on platter.
On that note, yes,
yeah.
Pranay.
But I think if you see some from 2020 onwards, post-COVID world, these fault lines are active and they are erupting. Every fault line, and unfortunately, and scarily, the intensity and the frequency has gone up.
Yes.
In last 1.5 years, we have seen Thailand, Cambodia, we have seen India, Pakistan, we have seen Pakistan, Afghanistan, and now and the Iran, along with the entire GCC region. In fact, from India's neighborhood point of view, we have seen India, China, though we managed that conflict very well. And in fact, Chinese were also mature
You're still
enough.
managing it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we have managed, but look, that dispute still remains, and we share a undefined, undemarcated 3,488 kilometers of border. So if you see, we live in a very dangerous and a volatile neighborhood.
Tumultuous, yes.
And in fact, this is if Iran acquires a nuclear weapon, if you think loud, then this will be this is the most nuclearized corridor on the planet, from Russia to China to India to Pakistan to Iran.
Interesting.
yeah.
Very interesting.
It's a
The
good
most
point.
nuclearized corridor.
Yeah.
But I actually think that should this war end, and should it be advantage America and they go in, I think this could very well turn out to be a Trump's WMD moment, where they might not find a nuclear weapon at all. 60%
So far,
enrichment.
they have.
Since 2015, Netanyahu is saying Iran is 2 weeks from a bomb, 2 months from a bomb. Every year he has a time frame for Iran, and how long is Iran from a bomb? But there is no bomb. So we'll have to wait and see how this really pans out. But for now, thank you so much, gentlemen. We'll keep coming back to you to break down what's happening in this war, in this conflict. For now, we're seeing many theaters of conflict. Not a World War III, but it certainly seems like if there is going to be an economic fallout, it's going to be global, and that pain is going to be something that might pressure countries into seeing some semblance of sanity in talking peace rather than war. Thank you so much for watching.